And I'd like to introduce Ray Jeffrey, who's Director of NDIS Queensland, based in Brisbane. And I've been talking to him, he's had heaps of experience on all the trial sites around Australia. So he's going to give us an overview and then we'll have time for questions. So he's a great resource with lots of knowledge and wisdom, so feel free to use this time with him.
Thanks very much, Sue. You're talking a bit, I hope I can do up to. My name's Ray and I'm working with the National Disability Insurance Agency. It's a very new national organisation. Is that working? Does it need to work? Up a bit? Very new organisation. We do have trial sites. I've got a PowerPoint presentation. I like to have it. Sorry, mate. I'd like to have a conversation rather than a presentation because I'd really be keen for you to get what you need out of this rather than me tell you what I know, sort of thing. So I'm happy to have a conversation during this and take any questions when they arise, or take it in whichever way you'd like to communicate with me and talk with me about how the scheme works and what it might mean for you. Before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and future. When I start these presentations, I usually like to play a video that we have the experience of 5 families that are participating in the trials around Australia at the moment in our trial sites. It's called Living My Plan. We have a few little technical troubles to try and get going and see how we go Peter, with this. Start with that.
It's based on what their needs are. Taylor's carers and ourselves are really trying hard to retain the benefit and the staff carers.
NDIS online and once. First of all, it's no two sports. That's freed up here because there's so many sports things.
Since Brad's had NDIS connections for, he also has executive every day to go to meetings and go and study, which in the past was also my job.
Right now.
Today I had my curriculum and nursing service come in to shower and get me ready for school. I then catch a taxi to school where I have a full-time wonder one day who not only helps me in class, but takes me to the bathroom and gives me lunch. After school I go to lunch where I meet my random assistant and train with my car for an hour. Before the NDIS though, my mum had to be my random assistant. None of the service providers would send someone out to random assist because their rules didn't allow them to sit on a stool which you have to do to be a random assistant.
So you've got three really good friends that you both and Fraser. And so this is what it's all about. Three of them or your son or your daughter to as much as it's
Prior to the case, the presence of a woman, and had it not been in place, I would have done it without I've been able to return back to work myself part-time and also contribute to the community. So we know I look at what's our time, what's our work.
You've got to act. And I can do the roles. There's one way to
Under the NDIS, they can choose exactly what somebody supports me and not have someone picking the supports they are going to give us.
My sister is enjoying
So the key messages out of that video are what the National Disability Insurance Scheme is all about. Providing support for people to live the life they want to live, providing support for people to live independently if that's what they wish to do, providing support for participants in the scheme to exercise choice and control in self-directing the supports that they need, and to also manage the funding that they have in an individual sense or someone that can do that for them, and providing support to families and carers to enable them to continue to lead the life they want to lead and to support the informal care arrangements that are currently in place. Arrangements and those videos were taken about 12 months ago, and we've taken them again very recently to have another 12 months experience of people in the videos about how their lives have changed as a result of the implementation of the NDIS. The NDIS is still, some people don't know a real lot about it, a lot of the detail. I suppose I was talking to Sue a few minutes ago, and she said, I wish they'd sort of increase the Medicare levy to fund some of that. Well, that's exactly what's happened. Governments have agreed as part of the funding arrangement for the scheme to increase the Medicare levy by 0.5%. So the 0.5% increase in the Medicare levy is what's partially funding some of the scheme. The Commonwealth and all the state governments are continuing to increase their contribution to funding disability support. Under the National Disability Insurance Scheme, currently in Australia, there's about $13 billion a year spent on support for people with disabilities and providing disability support outside the pension, that is. And that will increase to about $22 billion a year when the scheme fully implemented. So, an additional $9 or $10 billion a year in that sort of support. In addition, the supports will enable an additional 200,000 or so people to receive support that currently don't get support Australia-wide. I'm talking a bit here from the Queensland experience. So we've been here 12 months setting up the scheme here. It's not yet operational in Queensland. But in Queensland, for instance, currently 47,000 people get support through Disability Services Queensland, and that's expected to rise to about 100,000 under the National Disability Insurance Scheme. National Disability Insurance Scheme, it's not means tested, so people can get access to it. It's universally available to people who meet the eligibility criteria. The support you get under the scheme is not included in any income test or any sibling support arrangements, nor is it taxable, so it doesn't affect employment income at all. It's a new way of delivering disability support for people with disability. Takes a flexible whole-of-life approach to provide individualised support. I'll talk a bit about the arrangements that the National Disability Insurance Agency has in place and the contact that you might have and experience in the future. Is anyone here from the trial side at all? Good. Okay. So we might talk a bit about your experiences there too, if you have. Who else? All right. Through is it my way or the National Disability Insurance Agency? So whatever it is.
National Disability.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And you're from Perth too?
Perth.
Oh, okay. Great. The scheme provides supports that meet individual needs. So when the scheme rolls out and some contacts made with people with disability, our staff, generally our planners or local area coordinators, will contact people and start to talk to them about how they want to lead their life. The early conversation about what are the goals and aspirations that you might have for your children or your children have for themselves, about how they want to lead their life, and work with them to plan for the sort of supports that they might need to enable them to make progress towards those goals. The National Disability Insurance Scheme isn't the only, and the plan that a person has under the National Disability Insurance Scheme, the funding they get, isn't the only thing that will contribute to improving a person's life. So the National Disability Insurance Scheme needs to work with the mainstream service organisations, so those schools and hospitals and mental health institutions and those sorts of arrangements that are currently in place to make sure they continue to provide the support they need. The National Disability Insurance Scheme provides the supports that are disability specific to enable people to participate, for instance, in education, once they get out of the health system, all those other sorts of arrangements need to continue. As part of that, the National Disability Insurance Scheme also supports that are provided by the community and by informal care arrangements. So there is an arrangement that non-individualised part of the funding is called information linkage and capacity building. So where people can go to organisations that have broad experience in a specific type of disability or a wide-ranging community activity, where people can go to get information and be referred to other organisations and link with other organisations to get the support they need. So that's what the plan contains. Choice and control central to the scheme. The early advocates for the scheme wanted a shift in the control from the service providers and governments, directing where supports are available, directing where funding is going to enable participants in the scheme to have choice over where, when, who, how their supports were provided and who provided those supports and how they manage the funding in the scheme, the individualised funding that's provided as a result of the scheme. I'll talk a bit about the options for that in a minute. It'll be delivered in local communities. We're currently operating in 8 trial sites in all states of Australia except Queensland. I'll run through those in a minute. It'll have national coverage, so everyone in Australia who meets the eligibility criteria will receive support from the scheme. and the National Disability Insurance Agency is a national organisation, and we will be in many local and regional communities and large communities too. And it does have an insurance approach. It is called the National Disability Insurance Scheme. The premium that people pay is related partly to the increase in the Medicare levy, but we all pay our taxes, and the taxes that we do pay come into the scheme. The insurance approach is applicable in two ways. We do have a team of actuaries that manage the funding in the scheme, but they also manage the outcome frameworks of the scheme. So when a person talks to us about how they want to lead their life and the types of supports that they need to improve the supports they get in their life and achieving things they want to do, we measure the supports that we've provided to the outcomes that people have achieved too. So it's not strictly based around the funding, it's also understanding that people's lives have improved as a result of the new supports or the additional support they might receive. Any questions yet?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm from Victoria, and I know a number of people who have joined in the trial here in San Barwon district, Geelong. And in Victoria, they state that people that who their children or the person with a disability is not on the disability support register will not get looked at or have funding at all through the NDIS.
That's not true, it starts, okay? So the current arrangements in place in state and territories will no longer apply once the National Disability Insurance Scheme comes into play. What will happen, and there's a variety of methods, that being on the Disability Support Register will give the National Disability Insurance Agency information about the participant has sought access from the Victorian arrangements, for instance, or registered need in Queensland is a similar history. We will contact people on the Disability Support Register or Register of Need, invite them to apply for access to the scheme. If they meet the criteria, they'll become participants in the scheme. Okay?
So they get preference before anyone else. So if you're on a DSR, you get preference before people who are not on a DSR?
No, there's, look, at the moment, so this is part of the debate. Governments haven't yet agreed how the full scheme rollout is going to happen. It's going to be very close. I read in this morning's paper that New South Wales and Victoria are expected to announce on Wednesday the arrangements for how people will phase and transition into the scheme. When they agree on that, the National Disability Insurance Agency will approach participants under the rules provided by governments about how they will enter the scheme. So, for instance, in the trial sites at the moment, the people on the Disability Support Register would have been registered in Geelong, I suspect, and they will get access to the scheme according to the phasing rules and transition rules that are applied. It'll be over a 3-year period, and it might not happen in the same place all at once. It could happen in different geographical locations over a period of time. Okay? People that are currently being supported by Victorian government, for instance, will continue to be supported by the Victorian government until they become participants in the scheme. But they will know when that happens to them. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, we are on the DSR. My daughter does have a DSR.
Yeah.
I'm just letting other people know who have younger children who wouldn't necessarily have a DSR to contact their case manager to get on a DSR, so then they don't have to wait the whole 3 years until they're fine back before the scheme comes through.
Yeah. That's, if you're on the DSR, it'll allow us to know information about you, but the phasing and transition rules will be how governments have decided to roll this out. So being on the DSR is a good thing because we'll have your details and you'll be able to access it much easier, but when you access it, it will be determined by government. Okay? Yeah.
So he's saying that NDIS will contact us. We don't need to do anything without contacting them, they'll contact us.
So we call it a wide entry gateway. In some circumstances, we'll know people who are currently being supported in the state governments by state government funding programs.
But as in like if you're on disability pension?
Yeah, well, not disability pension, more about if your supports are provided by Disability Services Queensland, for instance, or where else?
No.
In Victoria, through the Victorian government, if you're getting support through the Victorian government arrangements, not the pension arrangements, okay? We'll be able to contact you. We'll get information about the participants that are likely to enter the scheme, and we'll be able to contact you. If you're with a service provider, we can seek information from service providers about the details of people they support and contact you directly. You're also able to be referred to the scheme according, again, to the rules around when people are going to be rolled into the scheme. Okay, so it's a two-pronged approach. We'll be able to know where you are, and you can come to us and talk to us about access to the scheme at any time. Okay? We'll have a lot of people on the ground talking to people with disability and potential people who will be in the scheme, to talk with them about how they will enter the scheme and to start really planning with them too. Sorry?
There's a lot of people, isn't there, employed by the NDIS to help families or whatever.
There will be. We're not all that big at the moment.
They are getting paid out of the NDIS that our children, the money should be going to our children, but they're getting paid another one.
So the National Disability Insurance Agency is the agency that governments have agreed will administer the scheme. The administration component of the scheme is 7%. The administration of the scheme for the agency is maximum at 7%. I think that's legislated. So we fund it to that degree. That's very low for standing, for instance, in commercial and other government enterprises, 12-13%. So we've been given funding.
I just wondered how much is going to be eaten away
Well,
for the disability.
7% of the funding available for the scheme is what the administration costs. Yeah.
What happens to families who are in crisis and they need it sooner?
Yep.
Help sooner than what happens then?
So the National Disability Insurance Scheme and the agency is not able to operate until governments advise us of the rollout of the scheme. So people who currently need support will need to continue to contact their state government disability service agencies to seek that support in that time. So the agency can't, the scheme doesn't become operational in the area until governments agree that we can.
Yeah, but the standard answer of TSQ is that we have to wait for NDIS. It could take 3 years, so what happens then?
Yep.
The families are, that's a very, it doesn't leave the person safe,
No?
No. Like in my case, I'm 67, he's 30, he needs a lot of help. And,
Yep.
I cannot give him the help that I normally would have given in the past.
Look, and this is why the scheme's been brought into place, because governments and the Queensland government, for instance, currently fund 47,000 people for disability support. We know it's going to be about 100,000 people who are going to access the scheme in Queensland, so there's been this gap for a long time. We are unable to provide support until we become operational, until governments agree that we can. In the meantime, the state governments are responsible for providing supports for people with disability. Yep.
Yeah, just as well. My daughter in New South Wales, the else New South Wales team might have social experience. Go through ALA, which is our...
Can you speak up, please? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go through ALA, which is the New South Wales disability agency's home care. Frankly, are a shower, but really not very good. But transferring onto the NDIS, we were told to contact the Cerebral Palsy Alliance by ALA. Of course, Cerebral Palsy Alliance really don't want to bar anybody who hasn't got cerebral palsy. Because they're there to look after their client.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? Well, obviously, I'm not as British, but we are under Cerebral Palsy Alliance.
So we were told, so we are around cerebral palsy on the Central Coast. And they said, no, don't be told that, we're not going to be responsible.
So when we left early intervention, we were straight into Cerebral Palsy Alliance, and that's what we're with.
We do it.
We went from Dubbo, so
Okay.
yeah, visiting somewhere else. So that's
In my area, it's not the case.
yeah.
So it's just transitioning in. I'm a fear that my daughter will again be back in the queue because she has a rare condition.
We're at to you to transition in if it's through, sorry, I forget the organisation that you mentioned. Cerebral Palsy Alliance, that's right. They're not the sort of key to get into the scheme. It's a National Disability Insurance Agency. So if you're currently being supported, we have contact details. We'll be contacting you at the time that you're due to phase in or in advance of that time. If not, you can come to the agency and talk to us about when you're phasing in. So a referral to the Cerebral Palsy Alliance isn't something that will get you access to the scheme necessarily. It's more about coming to us and testing your eligibility with us. Although people who have Cooper-Charles syndrome automatically get access to the scheme because it's recognised as a disability where you will get access. Okay?
What was that one?
Cooper-Charles. So we have some arrangements in place where people with disability have particular conditions. As a result of that condition, they get automatic access to the scheme. They don't need to test their eligibility because that condition is recognised as something that needs a permanent condition that needs support. So group chat is on that list of conditions.
Can I just ask a question too? We're from New South Wales as well.
Yep.
And just to say, we have had no support. ADAP just wiped us under the carpet.
Yeah.
So there's been nothing for us at all.
Okay.
And we're in Wollongong, it's not like a country town. So my question is... how
Sorry, it's not likely to come to town, did you say?
No, it's not like a country town.
Oh, sorry.
It's a city.
It's my
It's a city, and there's no support for jailers with Rett syndrome. There's no one else in our area that has it.
Yep.
But we don't even know how to get on the disability support registry. There's just no support or information.
Yep.
Go to your local member of parliament. That's the only way to do it.
Yeah, I don't know in New South Wales. I don't know if there's a registry of support needs in New South Wales. I don't know. But certainly there are people with disability currently not receiving support in the jurisdictions, and this is what this scheme will change. It will take a little bit of time because the scheme is going to implement and roll out over 3 years. New South Wales is over 2 years, and the rest of Australia is over 3 years. Western Australia hasn't yet signed up to the full scheme yet. So there will be arrangements in place how that happens. But the National Disability Insurance Agency, the scheme won't provide support until we become operational in those areas. The state governments to do that until we come into the areas.
So if you're not with an organisation, recognition through being on a disability support pension, would that be recognised, or you still have to advocate for yourself?
If you have evidence of permanent disability, if it's a group chat, you come in, show us that evidence, and you basically become a permanent member of the scheme when you're due to phase in. Okay?
Thanks.
So you might need to, if you're not currently being supported, you might need to contact us in those arrangements. Although we'll have a lot of people around regional towns that are talking to people with disability, having forums like this in each of the, Wollongong and Darwin and places like that, to engage with people who understand and provide information about how this will roll out in their area.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're from Townsville. Is this NSR the same as DSQ?
I think it's called NSR.
The DSR, sorry.
Disability Support Register is the Register of Need in Queensland is a simple thing. I think they call it.
Sorry?
The Register of Need.
Register of Need.
Yes.
So is that what we need to get onto?
You don't need to get onto it. You can, if you get onto that, what it does is say, so if you need support, I'll be approaching Disability Services Queensland. They will undertake some sort of assessment or eligibility. And if you need support, they'll provide you with support or put you on the Register of Need. If you're on the Register of Need, we'll be able to get your details much more easily, but it's not imperative to get on the Register of Need to engage with the National Disability Insurance Agency. Yeah. Sorry, the lady asked if community participation is automatically covered. The lady asked if community participation is automatically covered by the NDIS. The NDIS is a very individualised scheme. So if a person describes to us that they want to go and participate in the community, typically go to the pub or do anything, something, go to the footy, do things that other people want to do, the National Disability Insurance Scheme does pay for the supports that are needed to support someone to do that. We don't pay for the activity itself, but we provide the support to enable people to participate. That's right. Yep. No, that's the registration, look, registration helps us contact you. Sorry guys, we might need a little bit of...
Sorry. We'll just have a little bit of time for discussion over morning tea.
And I'll be around all day, so you can contact me, well, not all day, but most of the day, so you can talk to me after this if you like to. We do provide, and I'll show you a slide in a minute that says that's the primary level of funding that people are using is to participate socially in the community. Yeah, back.
Just to follow on to some of these questions, have they finalised their unit costs? I know there's a lot of discussion in Victoria, and especially in Darwin, because the unit costs that get the respite, physio, all these services were way under what was feasible or what was being charged. Has that been sorted out? I know they put up the respite costs. Has that all been sorted out? Because that's a ground rules thing. People want to know what their services are going to cost.
Yep. So this goes to the pricing of the National Disability Insurance Agency. And the National Disability Insurance Agency is a price setter. So we provide an indication of prices that we're prepared to pay for supports and services, and they're advertised. They're on our website. You can check them out.
They're way below what people are being charged.
Some people say that. Some providers say that. But our experience is in some items that's true, and we've had significant representation, and we have increased the pricing for some items, including personal care and support. In some others, it's a market at the moment. It's an efficient price that we charge. When the schemes mature, we'll go to full market price, so we won't be regulating the market on pricing. But at the moment, we are a price setter. There is discussion in providers and among participants around pricing. The pricing that we've done is benchmarked and matched against other schemes of a similar nature, takes into account awards and overheads, all that sort of thing. There's a methodology behind all this that's been tested. It does vary from state to state depending on awards, and it takes that into account. It also takes into account rural remote locations. There's a loading for providers that participate in rural remote locations too. So the short answer is yes, those pricing schedules do apply, and that's what's applying at the moment. There isn't one for Queensland just yet.
I know they up the respite in some of them.
Yep.
It's finalised now, so it's what's on the website.
What's on the website applies. We do have indexation, and over time, if we find that the market's not responding as a result of the pricing, we'll adjust that.
So given that you are at the moment a price, you said you're a price setter, and then in time the almighty market will take over. Obviously, company goods it's managed to over the past 60, 70 years, not managed to. I just wonder, will we, if we decide to charge more than the government is rather than forcing willing to pay, then there will be a gap. So, do you see a possibility of a gap?
Is there a mandated gap?
I get you. The price that we set are the price that we're prepared to pay providers at the moment. When we, over time, in 10, 15 years' time, it's going to take a while before this scheme matures to a full scheme. We'll look at what the market's like. It'll change totally from where it is now, I'm sure, At the moment, the largest provider in Australia is 1% of the market. $12 billion, and the largest provider is 1% of the market. There's no other market like it probably in the world that's so diverse. And so it will change over time. We'll need to monitor and respond to that as will governments and understand, when is the right time to shift to a more market-based pricing, but that won't happen overnight. But we expect it will.
Do you expect to see a gap?
Look, I sort of work for the government, but I'm not working for the regulators of the scheme, if you know what I mean. So I don't expect there to be. I think we'll be very cautious about how we start providing a market price for that, because we don't want there to be a gap. At the moment we don't expect people to contribute to that support that we're currently providing, and I expect that to be a principle of the scheme. How about?
We're currently registered with DSQ, but they constantly ring me and email me to try and take me off the register.
Right.
Should I try and stay on that register? Will it make it easier to transition to the NDIS later on, or? If
you're on the register, they'll have your details, they'll be updated regularly, they'll provide us with their information, we can contact you. My advice would be, if you've got it on there, stay on there, because it'll make it easier for us to contact you.
They just keep hassling me to try and get me off.
Yeah, I understand that. See, what you've done by getting on the DSQ is also you've tested a bit of eligibility around how you might get into the scheme too, and that's good for us, because you won't have to tell your story to us again as people with disability have had to for many years on the different approaches they have.
I just want to know if there's any link between the people who are registered with Better Start, if that's also an important, because some of our members will register immediately with Better Start, but they don't register with the disability centres in this state. So I have new parents contact me personally, so I just want to be able to give them the right information, and if they're in that package, that they will transition through that gateway as well.
No, that's a good question. So there are state-based programs, and there's Commonwealth programs like Better Start and Howcroft. Better Start and Howcroft, the funding for that will be rolled into the scheme over time. So people who are currently accessing Better Start will continue to access Better Start, provided they meet the, I think, 6 or 7?
Seven's the cut-off.
Seven's the cut-off, so they continue to meet that until they roll into the scheme. Once they do that, funding will be in the scheme, and the supports that people need, like the Better Start supports and other supports, will come from the scheme. Okay? But it is one of the in-scope Commonwealth programs. Yep. And it's not, if we don't, people can always contact us.
Absolutely.
Down the back.
Yep. Do they have the same limitations with Better Start as far as suppliers having to be registered with the NDIS or approved suppliers?
That's a really good question. Then. So this goes to a bit about what the scheme's about too. I didn't get off for the second slide, but anyway, come on. It's good. I mean, it's really good because I wanted you to leave here knowing what you need to know rather than me telling you what I think. It's a good principle. Under the National Disability Insurance Scheme, providers can register to be a support provider. Yep. What that does is enable them in the back of house to be paid. People have access to supports they need. Providers tell the agency that people have accessed it, and we can pay them in the background. We do that within 2 days. But if a person chooses to self-manage their individualised funding, and that happens a little bit in Better Start, you can choose whichever provider you like to undertake that work, and they don't have to be registered. Okay? Yep. So that's on the basis that you'll undertake the funding arrangements. You'll pay the bills, you do all that, you'll seek the providers, do all that sort of. About 4% of people currently in the scheme self-manage all of their plan. So they can either use a registered provider or use someone else to do that work.
Self-managed.
Self-managed, I think.
I was wondering whether it would be useful for Nadine to come up just for a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Talk about her
If she wants
experience.
She's got live experience like this.
I'm sure it's hard for everybody. It sounds like everybody's talking a lot about what they don't get and how hard it is. But it's actually, we've been on it since March, and we had a fantastic occupational therapist who's no longer working with us anymore. She's moved to the States, but she sat down and made a plan for us with Venetia. It was very, very intense. It was everything that we would want for Venetia, not just the things that she was getting at the time, but what we really, really need for her and hope for her. And it was just broken into different sections like fixed supports.
Support at home.
Flexible.
Yeah, flexible.
Flexible fixed.
Supports.
We've got fixed and flexible.
Yeah.
That's right. So all the things we wanted for her, she wrote down for us and put it really clearly. And then we just had a meeting. We got contacted by NDIA, and we went down and had a meeting with a lady who is our caseworker. And actually, since we've been away, she's messaged me already to say, "How's it going? How's your plan going? Do you need to catch up again?" So she's excellent and implemented this plan for us. Basically, what they did is they came back to us with, well, she had a big long meeting with Paul and I. It was intense, probably a couple of hours, where she went, we didn't take the measure because that would have been ridiculous. But she basically went through and explained, talked to us about what we wanted, and she wrote it all down off the plan, and made her own plan, I guess, for us. And she then allocated funds for each section, and I think in the end for us it ended up being about, I think $8,000 or $9,000 for 12 months. And I then sent that to my OT principal at our school, someone else that knew, and I got everybody to read it and said it was quite, full on. And they all basically wrote back what their opinions were and what they thought we could ask for more for here, or we need less here, we need more here. And we went back and I basically told her all of that, and we kind of negotiated. And then she came back, and I think we've got something like closer to 30,000 now, 28,000 or something for the year, and it's all broken down. But then when so now we can then go and find our own service provider. So we used a service provider in WA called Therapy Focus, but because our amazing OT left, we were kind of like, oh, well, we don't actually have to stay with you anymore, we can pick another place. In the end, it seemed a bit too hard to find somewhere else when they knew Venetia, so we kept going with them. But now they're actually accountable to us, and I feel completely different about it. And Paul and I talk all the time, if they're not doing what we need them to do, then we would tell them. I mean, we could tell them before, but now it's like, hang on, this is our money, because we self-manage the funds as well. Why haven't they, because I work full-time and Paul's Venetia's carer, so I'll say, what's happening to speech? When have they come over, and if she hasn't come over regularly, will I contact them? And we demand a meeting, and even just before we come over, we've had a big meeting to say what we need, this isn't enough. And I feel more empowered. I feel like this is our money that we're using, and you should do it the way we want to do it, rather than, aren't we lucky to be part of, getting this therapy from DSC, which is what we were in before. But the great thing is that it can change as well. So we've been back and had the plan changed probably 3 times. She was wearing AFOs, which were hurting her feet. So we've taken them, because they're expensive, so we've taken them out of the plan. We put 2 pairs of Piedro boots in there, and then the funds are also in there for the physio to measure her up and all the admin around buying them. And Venetia's recently started hippotherapy, which I would have paid for because it's fantastic and it's worked really well for her. But it turns out that we can just amend the plan and use some of our funds for hippotherapy. So whenever anything needs to change, we're going to change it. So for us, I think we're going to get to the end of the year and we won't have spent all the money. But so that's why I'm saying to all the therapists, just keep going, book us in, do whatever. We've got a pool of money there that we can use. Let's use it. Because our therapists were a little bit concerned about doing too much when I would bring up about speech not coming over or not whatever. She's like, oh, but I said, don't worry about the money because when we use it up, then we'll probably be at the end of the year anyway, we just start a new plan or we'll pay, whatever. But we'll get the most out of it by spending it, do you know what I mean? The only other thing I was going to say is that first, even at this stage, I've only ever paid about 4 bills, which is through a psych who sends us the bills. They seem to be onto it. All the other therapy providers are completely lost still, and they don't know what's going on. And our therapy focus that we still use, they came over the other day and I only realised that they hadn't actually billed us yet. So there's like $9,000 in support there that they haven't even touched. I was like, well, send the bill. Like, we pay it. No one's going to pay you unless you send me the bill. So we just pay it. We have to set up an account for self-managing funds anyway, which is how I prefer to do it. We've got an account in Venetia's name. I pay the bill. She does therapy with a psychologist on a Friday. And I get the bill next week is $90 and I just pay it, and then the week, 2-3 days later, $90 is in Venetia's account. So I just keep paying for things electronically through her account. And then you can move that money around, like if you had to use it all for something else, you still get reimbursed into that account. So yeah, I think it's good. So I don't think you should worry too much about what you're not getting and just look forward to being a part of a scheme where you're in control. Yeah.
Ask if you're not going to use a registered organisation, how do you prove that you've used that money for that? You know what I mean?
So you can use anybody, obviously, any kind of service provider that you want, and you need to fill out. They give you an invoice, and you fill out a form, and you send that through to the accounts. We send it to an accounts department at NDIA in our area. You actually don't even need to send a copy of the invoice if you don't want to. You just have to fill out the form to say, I've used this much of my flexible support, it's $90, whatever, sign it off. Just send that to them and they reimburse you the $90.
Okay, thanks.
So, it's a bit like the tax system that we expect you to keep your invoices, but you've got to tell us what you spend your money on. Sorry.
So I currently employ people myself who aren't necessarily registered providers. They just have an ABN. So is that provision under this there?
You need to keep those arrangements in place about occupational health and workers' comp and that sort of stuff. If you do it already, that's a transition. She's a bit more expert in this. She's experienced in this.
You're okay to say 20,000 paid this year. Next year, do you have to replan, resubmit a fresh plan each year? Or is that roll over?
You can make it roll over, but you still need to have that meeting and discuss it again. And obviously, for a little one, it's going to change, so we'll want to move. And at having 1 year, we might end up realising that we didn't use as much of that, but we need more for, physio and, hypo and things like that. So every year, it goes every year.
Can I just make a comment? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to make a point now, which was sort of a bit like what you just asked me. The key around the whole system is having goals for your child, for your child. So it could be, I want them to walk by the end of the year, or it could be speech goals, or living independently. So the funding is geared up for those goals. If speech is low on your goals setting, you're not going to get a lot of funding for speech. It's going to be for those other goals. So then, when the next year comes around, right, our child walking, what do we need to push now? And you can get more funding for other things. It could be speech, it could be more physio, things like that. So it really is setting down. So what do we want for my child? Where do we want them to be by the end of the year? And get the funding for that. There's no point having funding for something that's really not going to help. You know, physio, the your child can run around all the time and everything. It's a waste. So,
No, that's exactly right. And that's, again, part of the scheme that at the moment we have 12-month reviews of the scheme. That's not about eligibility. That's around, look, you said these are your goals and this is the reports we provided. Have you made progress? Do you need something different somewhere else? I don't tend to focus on the dollar value. What we say is you make progress towards your goals and we provide reasonable and necessary supports to do that. So the money, whilst it's significant, it's about making sure that you get the support you need to meet those goals, and if you don't, you need something different. 12 months is what we're currently working on. The children can be a bit quicker, but over time we might go to 3 or 5 year reviews if people are getting what they need. And we don't want to intervene in people's lives when they don't want us there. We want to make sure that you're getting what you need. And if you need something additional, you come to us, or we might give you a phone call and say, how's it all going? You're getting what you need, and just move on from there. Not this 2-hour interview every year or something like that. Nadine's talks about. As Nadine's described it, that's pretty much how it works for self-management.
I just ask, say, go through all the plans and say, right, this is what we want, but for some unknown reason you don't use all that funding that year. Does that mean that they will take that money back, or
No.
the following year you won't be as eligible? They'll just say, well, you did. Like with any government department, if they don't use that money that year, the next year they don't get allocated as much, because whereas even though the next year you might need that much, would they still?
So,
you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
The plan goes for a year. If you don't use that money in a year, you don't accrue it, so it doesn't go. But you plan again for next year and say, well, I didn't use that money. Is it because, I had a period of 6 weeks where I wasn't able to, or I was broke, or something else happened? Or is it because you really need that support and next year you're going to need it again, and we'll continue to fund it next year?
So they could still be.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
It's not going to say, oh, well, you only spent
No.
quarters of it.
It's adjusted to your needs.
Yep, it's about needs. Okay? It's about what you need to reach your goals.
Sorry, we're talking about Cheryl.
Cheryl,
Unlike Nadine, I don't self-manage. I've said to them, I'm happy with James's program at the moment because he's out of school, he's doing an alternatives program to education. So I'm quite happy with the program he's in, but all the service providers have had big forums and expos where we can go along and choose our different providers. I've chosen James to be in Crosslinks, and they take him out from 9 to 5 every day, 9 to 2 every day, and do activities around him. Now, I've just had my 1-year review, and all my funding that I haven't used, like I said, it was because all the therapists were still all new to the system and everything. So that's just going to be all rolled over. And something I didn't anticipate was transport. I don't know if any of you get mobility allowance. You lose that the day you sign up. So when you're doing your plan, you incorporate that into your plan. And like then and Paul was saying, think of the future. Like James, I'm happy James is home with me. But in the future, he's going to want to move out with his mates. So we're looking now at him moving on to weekend, they don't call it respite.
No, call
weekend.
It's called for informal care arrangements, is what we call it, but anyway, it's respite for the
It's him going off and going hanging with his mates.
Yeah.
So that's what he's going to do. And his service providers, they take him out during the day and he's doing social skills, life skills. And on every second weekend, he goes out with his mates and they take him off to the pub and karaoke and whatever. So he's enjoying that. And I've just had my review and we've actually got more funding this time because we're more aware of it now that we need more speech therapy. He's self-managed. They've provided a coordinator for me. So I can just go straight to that person and say, hey, I need this, this and this, and they access it for me. So I don't have to hassle, they pay it. But if I want to know where James's funding is, I just look on his portal. I've got access to his portal through NDIA,
They give you, when you go to your meeting, they give you a code and everything, and just go into the portal and you say, okay, I've spent that money and I've got this money left. And like the deal saying it's fixed and flexible so you can move it around. So if you spent a little bit on physio but you need more speech, so you can switch it across. And if something comes up, like Nadine, I've rung up 7 times and said, look, I need more speech therapy because James has deleted the program several times. And they take into account travel, distance for the speech therapist to the house. So they've just adjusted it all the time. Is there anything else I can add to that?
Can you switch back and forth between management
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
So if you decide, oh, this is too hard, I can't handle this at the moment, you could go into having managed for you and then, okay.
Or a combination if you like.
Yeah, I've had a combination, like the transport, the mobility allowance lost. I had money in his account, James, for me to pay for his transport because to pay for his carers to take him off to his pub or whatever. So I've been paying that. But now, with my review, I've now got this coordinator and she is going to take over all that payment system. And like I said, with the speech, I've run up to the NDI people several times. I said, hey, we've had to adjust the plan. Can I have extra funding? So the speech therapist has written a report and said, this is the reasoning why. And they've just adjusted every time. And Rocky Bay, when he's now getting access with his feet, he's now got his, he's never had orthotics for years. So we just program, we can wait for the program.
Shirley, do you pay fees? Obviously, you would pay fees to process for the case management or whatever the title is.
NDIA do all that.
So that doesn't come out of the funding,
That's my NDI funding.
Sorry, I think what they're saying, the plan support coordination role,
Yeah.
we fund that as additionally in the plan. It doesn't come out of the support. Yeah, is it?
James.
Jane, no, Cheryl.
Yeah.
So it's an additional funded support in the plan. Okay. And if Cheryl wants to employ someone else to manage that funding in the plan, that's additional too. So in Queensland, they have Your Life, Your Choice, which is an arrangement where people get individualised funding support, but the providers take a percentage of the plan. That's in the National Disability Insurance Agency. We pay that additional support if that's the approach that someone chooses.
So he's happy. He's doing life skills. He's learning money safety. Because I go and have a meeting with Prosthetics, which is his provider, and I say, look, James is hopeless for money. 10 cents is $10. He's not. So I go through and say, this is what my goals are for him. I'm going to do safety skills, whatever. Work out a plan, and then if I'm happy with it, that's what they go ahead and do. And so we just work that way.
What the plan, just what Shirley said there, then you just break it down. So what are the goals, and then what the funding will be, what treatment we need to get to those goals. So it might be speech once a week, physio once a week, so forth, and then they work the budget around that.
Yeah, like his feet, he's got terrible in-toeing. So, and he was falling all the time. He's ended up in hospital from it. So we've worked out, okay, we need to have more physio for that and more orthotics. So that's what we're doing.
So do your individual therapists that you're currently using, do they submit some sort of quote to you so that you can forecast how much? Say you set your goal, then you can budget. Do they basically sort of give you a rough idea of how much?
They give me a rough idea, and then they put it straight through to NDIA. Right. Because I'm not self-managing, they put all the things through to NDIA, and then we adjust it. Like if they feel if it's too costly, well, we'll adjust it. Say to have it back to 1 week instead of 2 weeks. So we just adjust it to what we need.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
So, did you have a question?
Cheryl, when you make all those changes, or they have to see your coordinator has to see what you're asking, does all of that change happen smoothly and quickly?
It has actually.
So you haven't been sort of sitting waiting and thinking, oh my God, they haven't got back to me yet.
The only hiccup I've had personally is my coordinator with NDIA. When she wrote my plan, she went on leave. And now she's resigned. I hope not.
Look, that's it.
But it does happen very quickly and very smoothly. Like the plan was written straight away. And like Nadine, we've had my review just before we came to
experience, there have been circumstances where we're not as responsive as what we need to be, but we aim to be exactly as Cheryl described, and have challenging issues working with big organisations, but we do have good systems in place to enable us to respond to you very quickly, and we will have enough staff to have the administrative, that's what you get for your administrative overheads, and you need to run big organisations to be responsive to people when they need it. I just make another comment that, and it goes to what Cheryl and the team said, that the first plan you get to the agency, it doesn't have to be perfect, it's a starting point, and as you and your child grow, there'll be different things you need. So you'll have a lifelong relationship with the agency around how you develop the plan, and it'll change as circumstances change, and that's the responsive nature of what the scheme's about, I think. So, don't get a plan, get your first plan, but know that you're going to learn a lot as you go forward and as you make progress, and the plan will change. The circumstances will change.
I think it changes too when you talk to people, and people say, oh, well, I've got funding for such and such. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Because I think we're thinking now, well, me, I just think now what I want for James. James is quite happy and settled. I haven't thought long term. And so it's through talking to everybody at groups like this, we think, oh, gee, I hadn't got that. And that's when you go back and say, well, hang on, I've forgotten about this, what do you think? And so they're very accommodating. But my coordinator once said she found it, the NDI just wasn't for her, she wanted to be more in the field. So,
we're running out of time.
Yeah, it is so much.
I haven't got any seconds slide. It's been really good. Look, there's a couple of things I want to cover. It's really important that Cheryl just said that look to the future. The system's been crisis driven up till now. This gives people the opportunity to think a bit further into the future. So day-to-day needs, once they're there, think about what you need to do and what your child or person with disability needs in the future. Fill up in that junction now, so a bit ahead of the curve, They came into the scheme just when they were looking at getting the three boys into the house. And it was because the funding available through the scheme, we didn't pay for the house, the kids still pay the rent. But it's the individual supports that enable those boys to live in the house, and the parents, they lived in the house for the first couple of months, making sure things were okay, and clothes, they let go, and sports came in, and now they might stay one night a weekend there or something like that each, So that's sort of forward thinking about succession planning and progress and making sure, where you want to have your kids in the future. Can I just maybe run through a few quick ones, and I won't cover it all, and then we can have a few more questions, if that's all right? The eligibility requirements, look, the basic requirements are the person has a disability and it has a significant impact on the way they want to live their life. The person will need ongoing supports. The under 65 when they enter the scheme, when the scheme rolls out, and have the residency requirements that it's getting. Look, there is also an early intervention category where people come into the scheme, if they're likely to or have a disability, but for critical care, it's automatically treated the scheme. It's been worked out already. That's what I was talking about. Okay. And we talked about better start. If you can't get a better start, we'll know about you and we'll contact you if you'd like to. Quickly, the locations, and there's people here from Western Australia. So in Western Australia, the Western Australian government also have a trial site, but they're sort of evaluating this house. You probably see a bit of press, I'm sure you do in Western Australia, about how good the Western Australian trial sites go. We're in Geelong, we're in Newcastle, Tasmania. The trial there is around young adults 15 to 24. South Australia, young children 0 to 14, the whole of the state. So where people live in regional, rural and remote areas, we're getting a lot of good information about how we deliver services and provide support for people in those areas. The Barclay is about 150,000 square kilometres. There's less than 70 people currently accessing the scheme up in that area.
Is there a reason why Queensland had no trial?
Campbell Newman?
There is.
Where is really slow?
That's not true. Basically, the Commonwealth and the Queensland government couldn't agree on the cost. That's basically what it came out to.
Have they decided, is it they're looking at two or more towns, or have they made a decision yet, or it's as the trial?
You're asking me about politics and policy now. Look, they have, but the short answer is governments are still negotiating negotiating where the scheme's going to roll out in Queensland. And the Queensland government also signalled that they wanted early launch something. They put some money into the recent budget around it, but they haven't yet got the Commonwealth agreement to do that. From what I read in the paper this morning, some agreements are getting very close in certainly Victoria and New South Wales. So I hear the word imminent used a lot, but I've heard it used a lot over the years, probably as you have too. But I think stuff's going to happen pretty soon.
The rollout is the
It's getting shorter every Sorry, just on that. So, the government's had a plan it's going to start on the 1st July next year. So that's the critical date.
That's in Queensland.
Every full scheme every place in Australia too. Okay?
Like you just said, that it's supposed to start July next year.
Yep.
Our key worker, we're in Melbourne.
Yep.
And our key worker came around the other day and said to me, start using all your better stars because it's going to be in this area next month or by the end of the year. Is it likely to just pop up like that within a month?
No. Look, lots of people lots of people talking about it. There's lots of information around. I don't work for the Commonwealth, but I'm not involved in it. And it's a really high level between the Commonwealth government and the Victorian government. No one knows where it's going to start in Victoria, but it's going to start somewhere outside of Geelong on the 1st July 2016. And according to today's paper, you might know next Wednesday.
But it's been delayed, hasn't it? That's
No?
meant to come out in after.
Oh, sorry. Governments, from time to time, last year they said it was going to be December, that we know, and then it was July, and then it was 31st of August. We get towards next September. Look, you can't understand it because some people don't understand it's a really big thing that you're trying to do, and it's really complex. People with disability haven't got the support they need, they've been waiting for it for years, and I can understand the frustration.
I thought we've got better start there. Just
Sorry?
working out how to manage that better start.
Yeah.
How long I need to drag it out for.
Well, it'll continue. You won't lose the better start. It'll continue until, is it over 2 years or 1 year the better start?
No, until
It's over the whole time. You get the funding over the whole time.
Even if we're 2019, we will have it right.
Oh, well, you'll keep that until then, but you'll probably stop.
It's just managing how quickly you
Oh,
can use
so
it.
don't leave yourself short. If
Yeah.
I suspect you'll know, very soon. I'm sorry, I can't It's people with disability. People with disability, governments, providers all want to know. The sooner we know it, there's a lot of frustration, but you just got to wait on those decisions. Yeah.
With Better Start, after there's 7, there's another set of therapy sessions you can have. I think it's 20, so I might be able to answer that, but I think it's about 20 sessions up until the age of 13. Should we be using those up now, and then because this is all going to be taken over, or is that part of?
I suppose it depends again. The latest question here around when is it going to come? When are you going to need that? How long should Better Start going to go for?
So
I'd make that decision when you know when you're going to come into it.
We're going to lose those when it comes in.
Yeah, they're all the Medicare subsidised.
Oh, you continue to get Medicare subsidised stuff.
So you'd still get that on that once IRA's enough digit. But
I'm sorry, I don't know.
yeah.
You won't need it.
No, you shouldn't need it either.
Yeah, so don't panic, so you can use it now.
It's about what needs are. If you've got it, then you can use it in the
Well,
time.
I've been saving it.
Sorry, I'm told I'm getting in the way of morning tea. I'll quickly run through some of this. Any other? Yeah, sorry. Sorry, just a second.
I'm from WA as well. Currently, I'm with a local area coordinator.
Yep.
We're trying to get a little bit of funding from them. It can take months because he has like something 60 people.
So you're outside a trial site in West Australia?
No, I'm not. I'm outside because I don't have a trial or anything.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What I'm saying is that when I do get a little bit of funding for breastplate stuff, it takes me forever to get that funding because he's got to look at it and then he's got 60 other people that he's looking at it all at the same time. So I'm thinking with the planning of this with your case manager, how many do they have under their umbrella? How many coordinators are there or case managers are there to deal with everybody? Or everybody's happy needs to be waiting months before anything happens for your plan.
I think this lady's experience in Western Australia is probably a bit significant, but once you have your plan and the funding, and you agree, the funding pretty much flows straight away, then you've got to work out who you want, which provider you want to use, and look at our local areas and provide you with support to do that. So the funding will be very quick. As soon as you agree to plan, the funding starts.
But who do you actually...
So there's 2 roles in the agency. We'll have local area coordinators like the Western Similar to West Australian model, actually.
Yeah.
And then,
They just seem to be so, I don't know, that they just take their time doing the job and they just go, yeah, we'll get back to you.
We'll
I get an email
right?
him and then 3 weeks later, I get an email back from him and I'm thinking, well, if this is going to be the case, you'll be sitting there on your hands,
So what will happen in the Dean's experience is you'll have a conversation with someone in the planner generally, but an LAC might contact you to say, have a think about what you need.
Yeah.
Talk to your planner. It might be a pretty intense first conversation. Might really nail it by the end of it. You agree on it. The money starts flowing. Right. We'll have local area coordinators too. We expect to have Australia-wide about 4,000. Currently there's 60 in Queensland. I think we probably have 500 in Queensland. Probably significantly more in other places. So they are really key roles in the agency. And for people with disability, their roles are to contact people, talk to them about pre-planning, the sorts of things they need to consider in their plan. Talk to them about, well, these are the providers in the area, to give you information to inform you about, who you might use. We don't recommend anyone, we just allow you information to say, these are the providers that you could use. But they also work with the community to make those differences in the Tier 2 stuff.
So I'm guessing then now it might be an opportune time for me to get hold of him again and just say, we're looking at this in the future.
Yeah.
Start planning something now.
Yeah.
So when it does come into place, we're ready to go.
Precisely. And on our website, there's a planning book that you can access if you want to look at the sorts of things we asked about.
Yeah.
And my last slide talks about the things you probably need to think a bit about now to get ready. Okay? And then pretty much what the Dean said, think about what you do every day, document it, and take it in to us so we get a bit of an idea. Sorry. Yeah.
Starts with the provider. Will they be only allowed to have so many people on their books? Like, my son was with a disability employment agency. So what she does was, he goes along, she gets paid and she sticks his name on. So she could have 50 clients, but not really do much for them. So they're just ticking the box because they've seen a client, they've asked 2 questions that they have to ask, then the government pay them.
Yep.
So, whereas somebody else, she might see like 30 a day, someone else might only see 10 a day, and that's all they get paid for, but then they take the time and the effort to do what they really should be doing. So, will there be some sort of control over these service providers so that they're not just going to be there ticking the box of as many clients as they can get so that they're getting paid per client,
There's 2 things about that. It's a bit different. This isn't an employment service provider. No, I'm getting to the second point why it's not. The other bit is they will because people with disability and their carers and parents and families will understand that those supports aren't being provided. And you'll say, well, you're not providing me with the supports that are in my plan, and you'll go and get someone else.
Yeah, but like this lady saying it takes forever because her person has got 60 people on her books or something. Of course it's going to take forever. There should, there should be some sort of limitation, and they say, well, we really can't. Because one person can't really look after 60 people. If someone, especially if everyone's throwing things at them, they want an answer to that. They don't want to wait 3 weeks down the track.
I think we've got 2 separate things happening. We've got providers and providers are supported. We've got agency staff and the responsiveness of the agency. So the latest circumstances will be what the agency will be responsible for in the future, and LACs are in West Australia. Providers are people who provide the support, so there's lots of large organisations around to do that. And they're the supports that you put in the plan that people are funded to purchase from.
My understanding is Ray's hanging around all day, so most of it. Which we really, really appreciate. So just nodding with all your questions, and I'd really like to thank Charlene and Nadine for contributing. I've got a little wine gift for you, and thank you